Hey, I'm Trey. Today's story is about something that started off as thrill killings and eventually evolved into a way of life. You might want to stick around and hear how some of these poor victims were murdered in unique manners. For the record, I upload similar content every Tuesday and Thursday. Please leave your comments and suggestions in the comment section because I'm always interested in your input. Well, if you're ready, let's get started. Forgive me in advance because I'm not good with pronouncing Spanish names. Carlos Eduardo Roberto Puch was born January 1952 in the city of Buenos Aires, Argentina. He resided with his parents and befriended a guy by the name of Jorge Antonio Ibanez, who was also a juvenile. Although Puch came from a relatively stable, good two-parent home, he loved living on the edge. People that were familiar with Puch stated that he had a thirst for thrill seeking. He was described as the kind of person who always took risks with life and others by living reckless. When he became a teenager, he became fascinated by real-life gangsters. 1971 was a time when drug sales and drug usage was just beginning to soar globally. The vast amount of money going through people's hands, along with the increase in drug-addicted people, caused a spike in all forms of crime. The money earned from the drug sales was typically all in cash, so a lot of businesses kept large sums of cash on hand. This compelled a lot of armed robberies and thefts to take place. During that time, two 15-year-old juveniles who happened to be friends and were all associated with a local violent street gang were known to their colleagues as resorting to thefts and burglaries to generate income. One evening in March, the two decided to go to a discotheque. Wow, a discotheque. Now that's as old as the Brady Bunch or I Love Lucy. They went there with the intentions, like everyone else, to have fun. While inside, the two juveniles were able to sneak into a restricted part of the club to see what type of criminal opportunities were available for them to cash in on it. While passing by a room where all the club proceeds were being counted, they noticed a second table with a large sum of pre-counted money. Later, it was determined to be around 350,000 pesos. Oh boy, they're rich now. That's about the equivalent to $1.42 in US. Just joking, Argentina. They stole the money and were free and clear at that point because no one had saw them. But for whatever reason, instead of just walking out with the money totally free and unseen, they went into an adjacent room and found the owner of the discotheque and an armed security guard drunk and sleeping. Fearing that the money they planned to steal was so massive, they knew someone would come searching for them, possibly with a vengeance towards themselves or their loved ones. So both juveniles agreed that something needed to be done immediately. One of those juveniles produced a handgun, then shot and killed both men as they slept. It was told but not confirmed that both men didn't even have an opportunity to wake up and view their killers as they were being killed. Both juveniles fled the scene shortly after. The police were notified and responded at the time, but there was no witnesses or leads. When the rest of the juveniles' colleagues that were in the gang heard about what happened, none of them would initially believe their story. They probably thought that these two snot-nosed kids, who were only known for thefts and burglaries, couldn't have pulled off something as big as this. That was until the police reached out for the public assistance in solving this case and the details were given to the public. This confirmed the two young killers' stories. Ultimately, Puch took sole responsibility for the killings and was praised for them. This earned the juveniles major status in the gang and he was given the nickname the Black Angel. Puch began to love the status and power of being known throughout the community as a killer. So much in fact that he became addicted to the thrill killings, more so than earning money from just robbing people. He was probably thinking like, why do I need money if I can just kill everybody? It was also believed but not confirmed that Puch would talk to some of his associates non-stop about killing people for the most trivial transgressions. Describe what does Marcellus Wallace look like? Say what again? I double dare you! 2 months later, the same two juveniles devised a plan to break into a Mercedes-Benz spare parts store. One day they actually did, but while the two were searching, they stumbled upon a room that contained a husband, wife, and child sleeping inside of the business. The business was closed at the time, but the owner allowed the young homeless family of 3 to live on the premises during closed hours. The man was alleged to be an employee that fell on hard financial times, so out of the kindness of his heart, the owner of the building allowed them to stay on premises until they found a more stable place to live. In turn, the man would keep an eye on the store while it was closed. When the unidentified man was seen, Pooch shot and killed him immediately, before he even woke up. The victim's wife woke up screaming and in terror as her husband gasped for breath with gunshot holes in his chest. Pooch then shot the woman and shut her up, but she survived. George, his partner, attempted to rape the woman after she had been shot and laid there nearly incapacitated and helpless. The woman mustered up enough strength to resist the assault by fighting off her would-be rapist. Both juveniles ultimately ended up fleeing with 400,000 pesos. While the two killers were leaving, but out of frustration, Pooch shot the crib where the newborn baby lied inside. What the F? He shoots at the baby and then they attempt to rape the mother? These two kids must have sold their souls to the devil already. Just 2 days later, the juveniles spontaneously decided to rob a nearby supermarket. As soon as the two crooks entered the building, without any warning, Pooch shot and killed the supermarket night watchman on site. No additional information was provided on this homicide. 9 days later, the two robbed an unknown person for his vehicle. Obtaining the vehicle was just the first part of the plan, which was to locate a vehicle for the use to commit robberies. Now that Pooch and George had obtained the vehicle, they then drove around looking for new places to rob. While they were driving around, the two encountered a young girl. This girl's name was not provided. She was walking home alone in an isolated area. George pulled out a handgun and forced her into the backseat of the vehicle. He then commenced to forcibly rape the 16-year-old girl. After Pooch and George were done, they thought it would be humorous to allow the girl to beg for her life. After a few minutes of allowing her to beg for her life, they ultimately killed her by shooting her 5 times. Now this is sad. I hope that they're shown even less mercy when their time comes. 9 days after the rape and homicide of the unnamed schoolgirl, they drove to the same location and repeated the crime with a different unnamed 20-year-old woman. Her name was not provided, but she fought off George from raping her. Pooch became wary of her cries and pleas for mercy, so he executed her by shooting her 7 times. I'm sorry, did the police even attempt to solve any of these killings, or was this just a way of life back then? No additional information was provided on the homicide. In August, Pooch and George stole a vehicle and got into a vehicle pursuit. During the pursuit, George died in a car accident, fleeing from the police. Pooch had minor injuries stemming from the accident, but he wasn't apprehended and he was able to flee on foot before the police arrived. In November, Hector Zamora was recruited by Pooch to become his new accomplice in crime. Several days later, Pooch and Zamora broke into a car dealership and stole 1 million pesos. It was alleged before leaving that Pooch shot and killed the night watchman after he surrendered to the juveniles. In February 1972, Pooch and Zamora broke into a hardware store. They surprised and killed the night watchman before he could reach for his weapon. The two juvenile killers searched the property and found a locked safe. Pooch and Zamora tried to open the safe with the keys they obtained from the dead guard's body. The keys didn't work. For some unexplained reason, Pooch out of nowhere shot and killed his partner, Zamora. Pooch then used a blowtorch to burn off Zamora's face in order to hide his identity from the police. Ingenious. So you burn off somebody's face and the victim can't be identified by the police. No, I'm sorry, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Pooch then used the torch on the safe to open it. The contents of the safe were not provided, but the police did find a break in the case. Pooch was arrested several days later because of his identification card being found in the pocket of Zamora's body. The authorities did not provide any details on what Pooch was actually charged for, but he was found guilty in 1980 and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Pooch is still alive in prison with almost 50 years served thus far. Good riddance. If you enjoy more stories such as these, click on one of the suggested videos above. I upload new content every Tuesday and Thursday. God bless and stay safe.